Welcome to the World Builders Anvil, episode 167. Stop creating a world. Start world building. Don't know where to start building your fantasy world? Do you need more? Does it make sense? Forget any worries and become a crafter of imagination. This is the place that will help prime your mind. Now, it's time to heat up the forge, break out the mithril ingots and hammer. Welcome to the World Builders Anvil. I'm your host, Jeffrey W. Ingram. Let's sup from the mug of Java and build. Welcome back. As always, I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And I am Michael Miller, your local haiku master. Did I really just say that? That shows you I'm not a haiku master, because I said haiku and not haiku. So obviously, my title needs to be revoked. Haiku novice.
Well, actually, he's working vigorously to create an app that will allow people to do haikus quicker on their phones.
I'll bet you that exists. I'll bet you that is a real thing.
Oh, I bet you there's something involving haikus in the app.
Undoubtedly.
1,000.
And Charles Lear is probably the one who created it. Big props and big shout outs to Charles Lear. If you guys have not been on the Undercraft group lately and you haven't seen the ridiculousness that has been Charles and I dueling haikus back and forth about Lord of the Rings, and everyone else is jumping in on the fun, and you should too, you should definitely get in on the Facebook Undercraft group and read some of them, because they are so funny. I was at work today literally laughing out loud at a lot of them. Because some of them are so silly. And Jeff insisted that I mention my favorite one, which is probably, and I'm not going to do it justice because you really need to read the literally like 30 that came before this one to get just how really funny this is. And I'm trying to find it. It's right here in the thread here somewhere. Go ahead, Jeff. You vamp while I try to look.
I vamp?
You're not familiar with the term vamping? This is like episode 166, 7. You are not familiar with the term vamping?
No.
The term vamping.
Encourage me to speak while you're looking something up.
The term vamping is in reference to you on the spur of the moment creating, auditory content. It's
you mean make stuff up.
Improved auditory content.
Oh. So be clever. Well,
I should have realized what I was asking. Never mind. It's not going to work. That's
excellent.
Yeah, I think this is my favorite one. So from Charles Lear, and mind you, a lot of other people have been contributing to this as well. Sean had some really funny ones. Matt had some really good ones. Rebecca's got some really good ones in there too. I got a couple good ones myself. But I think this one's my favorite. Where did Gandalf go? Oh, look, Gandalf has returned. Where did Gandalf go? So, Lord of the Rings and Hobbit haikus on the Facebook page.
And worst party member ever, Gandalf.
Gandalf?
Worst party member ever, I'm sorry.
How do you figure?
Worst party member ever. Okay, I show up, I blah, blah, blah for a few seconds, and then I disappear for hundreds of pages.
Yes, but he usually shows back up like right when he's needed.
Oh, geez. That's just give him excuses. Let's go.
Well, okay. Look, it's better than party members that don't contribute. He at least contributes. Like, he comes back and he's like, I got to make up for lost time, and he saves the day. He does that more than once.
Oh, please.
I don't know what to tell you. It's my opinion. I
believe it was Bilbo that took down the dragon. Gandalf did not do...
Bilbo didn't take down the dragon.
He took it down himself. By himself, not the archer.
What book? The Archer took him down. Bilbo didn't take down.
The Archer was an extension of the will of Bilbo.
Yeah, maybe I should go back maybe I should go back to my haiku about the Archer, because I think you'd like that one. When I find it, I'll read that.
And we both know the best haiku in there was pie.
Not a haiku. Not a haiku. Haiku has 5 syllables and then 7 in the second line and then 5 in the third. Pi is a singular syllable and a singular word. It's not even a complete sentence unless you are using "you understood" as the subject.
It's a declarative. Pie.
Pie.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Or command.
What? Orc what?
Or command if you need help getting there.
Fair enough. All right. What's the subject again? What are we talking about?
haikus, I believe. Welcome to the haiku episode.
It's not the haiku. We should do a haiku episode. Oh, you totally just gave me. We're totally doing it now. We have to have a haiku episode. In 2-3 more episodes after we've done this for a few weeks, it'll just be me reading haikus the whole time.
All right. Well, let's hop in here, and we're talking.
Hobbit. Less Hobbit here.
Let's Hobbit here, and when we get back to why I would have a show titled "Stop Creating a World and Start World Building," and this is something that I've noticed in my jaunts across the web, is that people often confuse creating a world with world building, and there's a difference. When you're creating a world, you're looking at a world through a perspective. It's a very important thing to do to world build when you're doing genre fiction, because you need to create the setting for you to deliver a story or a game or whatever you're doing with people. So it's super important to do these steps. But the thing is, you're not creating a world. And I talk about naturalistic framework worlds all the time, and I don't think I've done a good enough job explaining what a framework is. But the thing you need to keep in mind is when you are world building, you're creating something for people, because really the challenge is to make it feel real from the perspective you're sharing it. So the thing is, you don't need everything off the sides. Go to a movie set at some point. You're going to walk onto a movie set, and you're going to see like this great facade of a building, and you're going to walk through the door and there's nothing. And that is the inside of something somewhere else that was done in a studio.
Having actually worked on movies, I can tell you from experience that when you're watching a movie and you're looking at what's in frame, what you're looking at is literally 10% of what's actually going on. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what we're talking about here. Same thing with a lot of photography, at least a lot of the photography that I've done. Like I tell people, it doesn't matter what a given thing looks like or what a given thing is. It matters what I can make it look like. And that's usually with fooling the perspective, because you're limiting what people see. It's the same thing with a movie, and same thing with, I think that's the analogy Jeff's going for.
Yeah. So the thing is, when you're trying to create a world, you're trying to create something out of nothing. And there's a huge risk to that. And this is where I see some world builders get caught up. Ones that are trying to go somewhere with their books, or they're trying to create a game, or they're trying to create a world to share out with people. And they never get to that part of it, because let's think of the Earth for a second. The Earth has 15 tectonic plates, at least 162 ethnic groups, over 510 million square kilometers. It's 4.5 billion years old, give or take. And there's over 107 billion people that they've estimated that have actually been born on this planet. That's a lot of stuff. And then really is the thing about the universe, and wait, that's about 91 billion light years side to side. Well, sorry, that's a Monty Python reference, but it's really like the diameter of it. That's as far as we can see so far. We know there's about 91 billion, and maybe there's more or less. Who knows? But once again, that's an approximation, you know. And then you talk about alternate realities, other planes of existence. It goes on forever. So the thing is, if you get caught in this mentality where you're trying to create an actual world, you know, with all of the ethnic groups, and ethnic groups have subgroups within them, and there's subgroups within the subgroups. You get caught up in this thing, you get into this trap where you could build for the rest of your life. You will not be zero, you'll be near 0% done when you die. And so people sort of come up with, I need just this one more culture, this one more language, this, you know, one more millennia of stuff. World building is about the perspective that you want people to see. So when I say about this, and we're probably going to go into this just a little bit more, you know, on great things that really deceive it, and it gets kind of brought out. So I want to take a moment, and I kind of want to go in deeper about this idea of great examples in my brain, and Michael, I'm sure, will come up with some of his own, because Michael's full
great examples in my brain.
Because Michael's really, as I like to say in the business, full of it. But
content, full of content is what you're referring to. Yeah.
And this example will actually be content and useful. So there are two great examples I was thinking of when I was putting together the show notes for this episode, trying to get people past this idea of creating a world and world building, and this idea that it's a perspective that you're trying to create. A movie that broke it in a very humorous way was Mel Brooks' Blazing Saddles. There's a great scene later on in the movie where the big fight's getting ready to go down. Spoiler, there's a big fight in the movie. And all of a sudden they cut to this thing where it's like this musical being created. And you have like this big classic 30s style musical with up and down staircases. There are men dressed in tuxedos and top hats and canes and
putting on the a la putting on the Ritz.
Yeah, a la putting on the Ritz, and they're going over, and the director's fighting with this other cast of people, about doing this thing, and it pulls back, and the first thing you see is like all of the stuff around it. And when you're world building, when you're creating a project, that's the actual work that you're putting into it. That's the writing of the novel, or that's the creating of the art, or the game, or the music, whatever you create from your world. And that's kind of the stuff that you don't see in world building. It's sharing it out. It's finding people and selling the book. That's all of the stuff sort of off the screen. And then the great thing was that always leaves it in my mind, and there will be a link to the scene where this happens. Then also through the wall breaks through all of the cowboys, because it's a cowboy western movie. And when you first watch it, you're kind of like, why is this here? And then all of a sudden they come crashing through the wall, and the fight spreads all over the entire, I believe, Universal studio, or one of the big Hollywood studios. And a food fight. It just kind of goes on, but it just kind of elaborates the fact that the world building is what you're sharing with people. So right next door to that, great epic movie that you loved was like Water for Chocolate, or something else was being filmed right next door, and you don't interfere with it because that was a different world and a different perspective being shared out. So you have to be obsessed with sort of the frame of what people are looking at, sort of, what you're sharing with them. That's where you need the details, because in science fiction and fantasy and genre in general, people get lustful over those tiny details.
And the other thing that's cool is, if you are delivering your world in the written word, I mean, if what you're doing is a story or a novel, as opposed to doing a game, but in these particular mediums, you actually control what the other person sees. Now, they're going to create their mind's eye. You obviously have tremendous influence over that, but you're not going to control that ever. You're going to influence it heavily, but you're not going to control it. But you get to control what they see on the page. So if you don't want them to see a certain thing, then don't share that. Or if you don't know what it is, that you don't have to write that yet. You can leave things uncreated.
I think a great example is, the Easterlings. The Lord of the Rings talks about the Easterlings, but it very rarely got into it. Mm-hmm. So if you're writing the story, they get mentioned, and there's a little bit you can derive from them. But you don't need a complete culture, a complete language system, a complete, there's 20 million people here, characters written up for each of them.
Tolkien probably had it, though.
He probably did, but, he's also created, very little. He used very little of the world he created, because he spent so much time creating it, and he was created for a different purpose in general. He loved developing the languages.
Yep. He was a linguist.
And so he kept doing that. So so they probably had 2 or 3 languages.
The funny thing is that you're going to Tolkien, but I'm immediately reminded of Westeros, and they kind of mention it in the show where in Game of Thrones, one of the characters is like, what's east of Westeros? Seriously. And somebody was like,
question.
And one of the characters was like, Easter roast? And it's true. It's like, we don't know. Like, I mean, to be fair, I haven't read the novels, so I don't know if they're mentioned in the novels, but I don't know if there's anything east of Westeros. I assume there is, since there is a Westeros, so there must be something east of it to reference Westeros being west. But the point is that none of the tale touches on that at all. Like, you can mention that something over there exists, but you don't have to tell anybody what it is yet if you don't know yourself.
The thing I find very, very cool, and it is too, is like a lot of fantasy takes place in ancient or medieval cultures. Typically, like if you go to like a medieval village and you go up and grab a peasant, like, tell me about the world you live in. They're like,
this block.
This is the county of Michaelshire.
And that's the smithy over there. And when I'm hungry, I get my bread over there, and otherwise I dig in the dirt to my right, and that's what I do. I dig in the dirt all day, and hopefully stuff grows there. And when I'm hungry, I get bread. That's my world. It's my whole. So back then, married couples, when they said, "You are my world," I mean, they really meant it. You are my whole world.
That pile of manure we're saving up for next year's crop. That's why you are to me.
Yeah.
But there was actually a great line in Excalibur about this when I think it was Gawain was the one who was a peasant at the beginning, I believe. I might be mixing up the name now. It's been a while since I've seen it.
I think you're right.
Caught up with one of the knights, and he's running behind this knight's horse, and they're like, okay, yes, you can come with me to Camelot.
I love this part.
And the guy's like, he's like, okay. He's like, how far away is it? He's like, like 20 days. And the guy's eyes get big. He's like, the world's not that big.
Well, what's funny is that it's Lancelot, and it's Gawain. He originally tries to steal from Lancelot, but it's kind of like he envies him.
And then he gives him a rabbit.
And Lancelot brings him on as his squire, and he's like, hop on my horse, we'll ride back to Camelot. And he's like, I'll run. Like, basically, like, no, sir, I will run. And he's like, it's 20 days to Camelot. And he's like, the world's that big?
Yeah, I know, exactly. Just a great moment. But, it's like, so, it's like, depending on how your story takes place, you're going to have a lot of detail on a small section. And you're going to, and we talked about this before, you're going to know what's around there. But it's frame of reference knowing. It's not fleshed out, fully developed stuff. And now, if you're like me and you want to reuse your world, there's nothing wrong with adding more stuff, when you're waiting, for something else and you're just trying to fill the time. World building is a wonderful hobby too. It's a hobby for me. So it's one of those things I like to do. There's nothing wrong with fleshing out more, but realize that if you have it in you to share, don't create a world build. Be very conscious that there's a purpose. There's going to be, like I said, that frame that you're going to show people your world through. It just needs to look. I think it's funny I use this word real through that frame, but that's the goal. Even in like Wizard of Oz, which is not a naturalistic world at all, it still feels real when you watch the movie. So this has nothing to do with if you're creating really truly fantastical worlds or you're trying to create completely alien worlds. The thing is, you need the people to understand what they can see. And don't get me wrong, I like a lot of the metadata stuff, and I do create that kind of stuff because I like it. But that's Jeffrey as a hobbyist world building. But when I'm world building and I'm thinking about where I'm going with my world, it's from this idea that I'm just creating these different views that need to mesh together. And that's ultimately all world building really is.
I think the biggest perspective that needs to be stressed here is the delivery. Like, if you're building for the sake of sharing, then the framework is such an important perspective to be understood. Mm-hmm. It reminds me of a number of different fictions. I'm immediately reminded of Mage of the Ascension, the Marauders. Marauders in Mage of the Ascension basically became such powerful mages in a very vulgar way that while they walked around the world around them evolved and was manipulated by their perspective. And that's kind of what you have. If you're the one making the world, you're that circle of influence, and the person in the middle is your avatar, your audience, the person who's reading your story, the person you're sharing with. And you're just making sure that everywhere they look and turn, they see something believable. They don't need and can't, because you're limiting the perspective, they can't see the entire horizon. They don't know what's beyond that next hill. They can only see as far as you show them. You need to know what's going on within there, and maybe you want to know what's going on without. But the point is that if you spend the entirety of your time building a completely believable and completely authentic world, you may not ever get to share that story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And before I follow up with what Michael said there, I just want to point out what vulgar magic is to people who might not know. So think about, you can be subtle, and, like serendipity was a cool thing that I liked in Mage of the Ascension, where it's like things feel like they could happen so that they aren't vulgar. But, like if I throw a fireball and say asshole, that's vulgar magic. I think that's how that worked.
No, that's not it. That's not it. And I think it's funny that we're on such a really poignant part of the conversation, and you needed to segue into vulgar magic. But since you're going to do it, I will explain vulgar versus coincidental magic. And it's not
I
about...
like my explanation much better.
Your explanation is funny. It sends us right into explicit for that one joke, which is also funny to me. Because in the beginning of the episode, I was going to say, holy shit, is our fucking community so clever and intelligent and creative because of all the haikus. Like, super clever, funny, intelligent, hilarious, just, I love it. But I wasn't going to go vulgar until you did. But now that you have, holy shit, are they clever and funny and intelligent?
Yeah.
Anyway, vulgar magic versus coincidental magic. Coincidental magic is what occurred is literally coincidental and could actually occur within the bounds of the current reality, the current agreed upon reality. Now, the reason I say current agreed upon reality is because in ancient, I'm using air quotes that you cannot see, in ancient times where fireballs may have been real, if I yell fireball and throw a fireball, everyone's like, oh yeah, okay, he's a wizard, because that was believable then. But in modern times, if I yell fireball and throw a fireball, they're like, holy crap, what the hell just happened? That's not real. So because they don't believe that that's real, that makes it vulgar. Give you another great example that I used to use when I played the game. If somebody fires a gun at you and you stick your hand out like Neo and you stop the bullet because you don't want to die by getting shot, that's really vulgar because you can't do that. However, if you make the bullet hit the pendant that you happen to be wearing, and because of the shape of the pendant and the density of the metal, the bullet does not penetrate you, it's coincidental and you didn't die because, wow, how lucky it hit the pendant. That could happen. That's coincidental. Even
or the gun could misfire.
Even though you used magic to do it, that's coincidental. As opposed to going, stop, don't shoot me.
Oh, so you don't have to actually, it's not the bad language? I guess I missed that one.
I encourage the bad language if you're going to use magic whenever.
Coincidentally or vulgar. Okay.
Fucking fireball. I'm sorry. I apologize. I really don't like to be vulgar on the show. I really don't, but...
All right. It needs to happen occasionally because I can't help myself. Now, I want to go into another perspective that I think is even more poignant, that really sort of focuses in on the truth of it. Stage magicians. They're the best people when you watch them live and they actually do control the perspective. They take it to that level where they're controlling their perspective to such a degree that, one of my favorite ones is the magic bullet trick by Penn Jillette, Penn and Teller, the magicians of fame there. And so they'll go on the audience, they'll have people sign the bullet, and they keep it visible the whole way, and just great presentation. And then they go back to the stage, they load guns, and they actually they go back to the audience and have the audience member put the gun in the chamber for them. And they close it, you see everything happening, right? And then at the end of it, they shoot each other in the mouth from across the stage. They have like laser laser things, so you can see the laser going into the mouth of the other person, and they shoot, and they catch the bullet. They have the people sign both the casing and the bullet, and of course, when they're done with the trick, each of them have the one that was shot. Then they'll have that bullet in their mouth. But then the casings, I believe, are typically reversed to where, oh wait, we put the casings in the other guns.
Of course,
and of course this is BS. And I believe MythBusters actually even did a MythBusters showing that a pig was a much tougher jaw. If you shoot them in the mouth, it's going to rip their jaw apart. I mean, there's no way possible this can happen, but it's very convincing because it's the lens they want people to see through. So they're creating a quick story and a quick world around this one little event to pull off this really impressive looking trick. And I'm pretty sure they did not create the trick. I think that goes back for a long time. But still, whenever you see someone do a bullet catch and then they pull it off, it looks unbelievable. Because, especially with these, it's like, but they wrote, how is that in there? That's the magic part of it. That's the illusion. But they want you to feel like you're in the world you're in. The rules are what they are. And then it's just twisted. And that's what world building is. That's the real art of world building is it's creating the illusion for people to make them feel like they,
like that world could be
really
real.
Just witness something that couldn't happen. I saw a great one. I forget who was doing it. And they were showing the audience at home the perspective, not from the audience, but what the magician wanted you to see, which was how easy some of the tricks were. And literally, like he's just chucking cards over his shoulder and no one's seeing it.
Yeah.
He's doing card tricks right in their face, and they can't see the cards being like just thrown over the shoulder, which was like most of the card tricks are just like get rid of the cards you don't want.
There was a great show that showed a lot of classic tricks and how they were done. Mm-hmm. I'm a huge fan of stage magician tricks, and also I love when someone takes a classic trick and bends it or twists it or makes it new. Mm-hmm. And Penn and Teller actually enjoy this too. If you ever watched Fool Us with Penn and Teller,
what channel is that on? I've not seen that.
I just watched it on YouTube. So it is.
I was going to say I've seen some of it on YouTube.
It is so great. Well, this wasn't on there. This was actually something that I think Jim might have watched, but he told me about it. I think because I think it was a live performance through the guild because he belongs to a magician's guild. But it was this younger magician. He was like a teenager, and he's doing a classic trick, which is quite simply they take this little container, they have a live dove, they put the dove inside the container, they fill the container, you can see them, they are squeezing lighter fluid into the container, they ignite it real quick, and then they put a cover on it to douse the flames, and then they open it up to reveal that the dove is fine. This is an old, early trick that a lot of magicians learn. It's a classic trick. One of the other, and this is also a world-building parallel, is to know your avatar, to know your audience. So what this kid did is he's doing this trick, this classic trick. It wouldn't be a big deal for him to do this trick in front of a benign audience, but he's doing it at basically a trade show. Everyone in the audience is a magician. Everyone in here knows how the trick is done. So what he's doing is doing it a different way. He's doing it a way that they don't expect. So what he does is he puts the bird in, and he starts filling it with lighter fluid, and he's filling it with lighter fluid. And of course, you want to make sure there's lighter fluid in there, so he's filling it with lighter fluid, and there's more lighter fluid. And people in the audience are getting nervous because these other trained professionals, they're not the novice who is on stage. They know how much lighter fluid should go in there. It should only be a little because you don't actually want to hurt the bird. You just want to make a little puff of flame and then have it douse. So, of course, it's not going to hurt the bird. And this kid is loading it with lighter fluid, and they're getting nervous. Like, he's doing the trick wrong. He's going to make a problem here. And he's smiling and, like, yeah, this is cool. And he's just loading it. And he ignites it. And the flames, like, really billow out. And he starts to douse it, and it doesn't douse, and there's a lot of flame. And then finally, he's lifting the lid multiple times, and it finally douses all the flames. And everyone's like, "Oh my God, that bird is scorched. That bird is dead." And then he pulls the bird out totally fine. And that was the trick. It wasn't the fact that he did the trick. The trick was how he did the trick, and the fact that he tricked everyone who knew how it was supposed to be done.
Mm-hmm.
It
was like this game.
I was going to say, and that's also a world building thing in that he understood his audience. He knew who he was playing to. So play to the audience you want.
Yeah, and just to really finish up what Mike was saying there, and the utter opposite end of the audience perspective. I used to work at a youth center, and I would do this trick once in a while where I would have 3 cups. And so the idea is, and I forget exactly what it was, but like, so you would have 5 moves, and I would show people how to do it, like the 2 cups, on the outside were turned down, and the one in the middle was turned up. And they have to be not, and then you go through and you just, I think it's like 5 or 3 moves you go through and you reverse it. And then you sit there and you pick the cups up and you're talking to the kids and say, okay, now you try it. You put the cups back down, and no matter what they do, they can never match it. And it would blow their mind. But the thing was, all I was doing was I would turn the cups in the direction that I ended on. So when they started, even if they could do it, they would end up the opposite way, and they could see that it was wrong. But they wouldn't catch it because you're using distraction, you're using timing, using the tools in your arsenal to create essentially what you want them to see. The thing to really remember is and this is the reason why I wasn't worried about explicit because of my last bullet point here. World building is the art of bullshitting. It's just one of the forms of presentation. So the thing is, don't be afraid to fake the set. Don't be afraid to create illusions where you need to, and then break them if you want to. But the thing is, realize that, if the thing in you is to share that with other people, when you get stuck on creating those 15 tectonic plates or those 107 billion people who've ever been born on Earth, when you get stuck into that trap, you will never get to the share, and the share leads to regret, and that just sucks. So don't do that. And now for the world building task of the day.
Does it have anything to do with haikus?
No.
Bonus points for anyone that goes to the Facebook page and creates haikus.
Haikus, yes. Definitely. And if you can beat pi, I would be amazed.
Forget pi. If you can beat Charles Lear.
I know he was just
he was on fire. He was on fire. I'm telling you, it's great.
I couldn't keep up with the thread he was writing them so quickly. But all right, is go take your world and look at it. If you're stuck, if you're not stuck, go write a haiku. But if you're stuck, go look at your world. Borrow, cheat, steal a framework if you need to. Create your own. Do something so you have an idea of what you need to create that set or illusion for other people.
I just want to throw out like an example of this. Like what I'm thinking of is like, okay, you've got a fantasy world and you need a subsidiary bad guy. He's not the big bad, but like there's a small, like you want to make some kind of like cult or something. Like, okay, there's an evil cult over here. You can reference the evil cult and even show the evil cult, but like if you don't have them fleshed out, but you just need them as a piece, you need them to do a given thing, sure, fine, do it. You don't need to know how they live and all of their rules. Don't get me wrong. Like we're absolutely, we encourage you guys to flesh things out, but not at the sacrifice of progress, not at the sacrifice of sharing. Like it's one thing to be a world builder by hobby. Like I don't begrudge that anyone. But if your goal is to put something out, if your goal is to put out a book, if your goal is to have a game that is moving forward, then you need to know where to draw the lines. And the lines are the frame. The lines are the frame that they can't see the edge of.
Mm-hmm. And for example, is I've been sort of retooling and reworking my world from the bottom up. And so I have one culture completely redone on what I'll share with people. Where I have maps, I have a pretty good timeline for them. I have a language for them. I know a lot about this culture. That is like all I need for book one. I reference another culture. Another culture shows up, but it's such littleness that I only need a few vagaries enough to get through the scenes they're in. I don't need an entire culture for them. As more gets exposed, it'll show up as I come up with more stuff. I will go through and do it. And what I'm going to do is, and I haven't done this in a while, but in the next episode, we're going to go over how to build a framework, and actually get into detail about what I mean by a framework. And then I'll actually share you mine. And if you've gotten my my mind map, you kind of see the idea of what I'm talking about. But really, don't get stuck on the world. If you're going to get stuck in anything, get stuck with not having enough time because you're working and you're writing and you're world building. Because that's something you can fix, right? You can become more productive. You can find different ways to get a little more done or shift stuff around. But, when you get stuck and it's like the old go-to loop from old basic, line 10, print hello, line 20, go to 10. The program never ends. And that's what we don't want you to get caught up in. We don't want you to be in that moment. We want you to sit there today and say, you know what? I got to share my world out today. Maybe it wasn't in a book. Maybe it was just with some fellow game masters at a shop or at a convention. Maybe you're on the stage of a big convention floor like, Dragon Con or something like that, being asked about your world because you did share it out in a way that the public knows it. But that's what I want to see with you. I want to see you getting through and understanding that world building is not about it's not about creating a world. It's about creating a realistic impression of a world that people will see through what you're showing.
I want to change the word realistic impression to believable impression.
That's probably a better word than realistic because, like I said, this doesn't matter if you're creating, like I said, the Wizard of Oz or some really avant-garde, wacky kind of thing that makes people's heads explode, but they go, "Wow, that's awesome."
They want to believe it.
They don't believe it, but believable is really the more important word.
And you got to get that the people that are coming looking for your material, the people that are reading this stuff, they want to believe it. They're willing to meet you more than halfway on the believable side. I mean, sure, there's a lot of skeptical people out there.
And someone like me, I'll go like 90% of the way.
Yeah, I'll go a long way. Something that I want to like, something that I want to read.
And remember, those people who get stuck at the 10%, those aren't your audience for a science fiction or genre book. Mm-hmm. Or a fantasy book. They're not going to like any of it because it's too far from the truth. They want a Tom Clancy novel.
Yeah.
And those are great too and good for them, but you're not going to write the book that, makes everyone love fantasy. You might bring more people in, and please do, or you might make science fiction more accessible, please do. But there's 7 billion people currently in the world approximately. So understand that you can't get them all. Don't get stuck in making the world so believable because you get to not share it. Share your world. I don't even care. Just put up a website and start putting stuff up there. Let me know. I'll go check it out because I love checking out people's worlds. Even if you don't want to do a book, even if you're just a game master, you want to do it, just do it. WordPress.com is free.
What is the real world task of the day?
Well, I'm not going to go into the whole scale thing here, but it's just in general. A lot of us sit down all day. A lot of us work at computers. And what we don't realize is, the more stagnant, the more sedentary we are, the less breathing we're doing. And I was taught a trick in general, but you could do it in less ways. Breathe and breathe deeply. Take some time when you're on your breaks and just breathe in through your nose, breathe out through your mouth. I don't care if you do anything else. There's this thing called breath scaling that I learned, which I don't know if you can Google it, but I can't really show you on the air because this is audio. And maybe I'll do a video about it sometime. I'll look really ridiculous, but it really wakes you up.
I want to cover two things. One, on your breathing thing. I was a classically trained singer. And from a singing perspective, well, I still breathe this way, and I have a huge lung capacity still, despite the fact that I haven't sung or done a warm-up in literally like 2 decades at this point. Think about your lungs and think about your breathing as a bucket. Mm-hmm. Now, when you normally breathe, you just take a deep breath in, you go, your chest rises and your shoulders rise. Mm-hmm. That is wrong. That is what you naturally want to do, but that's wrong. You're breathing in the high area of your lung, which is close to where, the passages lead up into your throat, and how, that's easy. That's lazy. And that's not helping.
Feel it in the gut.
You got to feel it in the gut. So here's what I want you to do. And I'm not kidding. I want you to do this sitting, because you can make yourself pass out if you're not accustomed to breathing this way, but it is an exercise that is absolutely fantastic for you. I want you to take a deep breath in through your nose, and I want you to feel your diaphragm, that big, huge muscle that's just below your lungs, and it's down, it separates your stomach, okay? And you're going to pull downward. You're going to feel the air start into the base of your lungs, the bottom of your lungs, closer to your stomach. And you're going to slowly inhale and fill your lungs as though they were a bucket. Like, I can actually inhale for 10 to 20 full seconds, just slowly inhaling, filling the bottom of my lungs and then all the way up. By the time I'm full, I have to exhale so hard because the carbon dioxide is changing over in my lungs at the oxygen that I've already filled in. So you actually have to exhale quickly, and that's only because I'm out of practice. I used to be able, when I was singing, I could breathe in real slow, real long, fill up the entirety of my chest cavity, and then slowly exhale a hard, slow pressure out, and it gives you tremendous volume and power and a note-holding capacity when you're singing. But for what Jeff's talking about, for energy, for breathing, for thinking, for feeling alive, like, this is something that you can practice. But again, I encourage safety. Do this sitting. You should be sitting very straight up, very upright. Don't slouch. Don't pull your shoulders forward. Your shoulders should be back. And think about that. Close your eyes and think about that bucket. Think about your lungs like a bucket, and the air should be going to the bottom first, not the top, because you can't do that. That's not how a bucket fills with water. It fills from the bottom to the top.
You should feel pressure on your belly. And if you've been like, I used to do stage theater, Michael scene, which they get really serious into it there. But when you're working from the diaphragm, that's when you can project your voice and do a lot more with it. And I won't project my voice into the microphone right now because that would not be fair. But that's where you can be heard across the auditorium. But the thing is, it's weird since I've started doing this
without a microphone.
Focusing on my breathing and sort of moving my limbs around a little bit and getting the blood flowing, I've gotten so much more stuff done. It's unbelievable. Really, it's like one simple thing that's really improved my life, and I had to share that. So check in next time. I'm going to actually be going in depth into framework. So check in next time, like in depth. I'll share with you my basic framework and what I like to call like the 5 contacts, that you really need to have enough world done and moving out into your project. So we'll get to the 5 contacts next time. And I don't tease much anymore, but with this episode, it was really too long for one. So I kind of had to split up my initial attention with 2. You tell Michael when we were going through the headlines was really confused. He was like, these are like really similar. I'm like, well, the problem was it was one idea that ended up splitting into 2. So
yeah, I feel like this episode, the next episode are kind of a 2-part series. Okay, so the other thing that I wanted to add at the very end here, this is kind of an additional task. If you are on the Facebook page, and again, go to Facebook, look up the World Builders Anvil Undercroft is how it... if you just look up Undercroft, you'll find us.
Facebook.com/groups/Undercroft.
There you go. I always forget the address, but look for Undercroft. There's no other Undercroft. You'll find us. We do writing projects on there, and I just posted up the new Undercroft writing project a day or 2 ago, and I just wanted to clarify it a little bit. I want you guys to write 1 page, just 1 page, and you're going to introduce a character to me, or to your audience. I'm saying to me because I'm the one throwing the project out there. And it's one of these show me, don't tell me exercises. I don't want you to say, this is my hero. He's 5'9". He weighs 250 pounds. He's full of muscle. Like, don't just, describe the guy to me. I want you to write not even a story, but like an introduction. And I want to understand what this character is about, who he is, who she is, what their brief about their history. I want to know a little bit about the character. I want you to just introduce the character to me, but I don't want it to be like a character breakdown. I want it to be, if I was reading your book and I met this character as the reader, what am I going to read? Now, because this one page is going to be about this one character, it's obviously going to be more focused, as opposed to usually when you meet a character, you get just a very little bit of detail and then you get a little action. And you can do that too, that's fine. But my point is that I don't want you to do a character breakdown and just be like, he's 5'9", blah, 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 blah. I want you to tell me a little about the character without saying, this is the character. I want it to be like story delivered. So that's the new writing project. 1 page. Don't go long, more than 1 page. It's a real quickie. This is a short one. Not as short as the haikus, which you should also be writing, but short.
Thank you so much for listening to the World Builder's Anvil. We would love it if you would share the World Builder's Anvil with 2 of your friends, and so would they. If they are unfamiliar with podcasts, then you get to introduce them to the wonderful world of podcasting by showing them Stitcher or iTunes, or, best of all, just send them to our website, www.gardul.com. That's GARDUL.com.
Now strike while the mithril's hot.